Hey everyone, it's DFA, welcome back to the channel, and today we are taking a look at the brand new Tier 8 Premium CV, the Russian Chkalov. So what is so special about it? Is it any good? Well, let's find out, shall we? First we're going to take a look at some stats and then I will go back to the gameplay. I actually have two gameplays for you so you can make your own opinion about that ship. Let's take a look at it. And here it is, let's compare it with the other Tier 8 CVs. Immediately we notice survivability pretty average, nothing to see here. Maneuverability also fairly average, nothing to see here as well. The guns where it gets interesting, 8 13cm guns on each side, pretty good range, 8 kilometers, pretty good DPM and pretty high fire chance, so you will definitely be able to use that. The dive bombers, where it gets even more interesting, 32 of them, quite a lot, 2 squadrons, 4 dive bombers, not so good preparation time, almost 4 seconds, but these planes only have 13,000 HP each. That's by far the lowest at Tier 8, it makes the Shokaku planes looks like juggernauts, and yet the accuracy is actually quite alright. The damage of the bombs, it's not very good, the DPM is also not very good, and you do get a decent amount of fire. Well, it's pretty low to be honest, but okay. But the Chkalov does get an interesting mechanic to compensate. It's called the flight deck scheduling optimization. It will actually help you get those planes in the air faster if your squadron gets deleted. Let's take a look at it in action. And here we are taking a look at the Indomitable, who gets a preparation time of 4 seconds for its squadron of 3 planes. So we're going to be bombing some fish here, and you see that as soon as the planes go back to the CV, there you go, you get a preparation time of 12 seconds. That's 3 times the 4 seconds of each individual plane. Now what happens if those squadron actually gets damaged? So here we are sending it next to a plane, trying to get 1 or 2 planes to get shot down. And you're going to see that it will have no impact on the preparation time. It is still going to be 12 seconds, even if your squadron goes back to the CV damage. Now what happens if you actually lose that squadron? So let's take a look at what happens. You're going to see that it's going to get depleted. We're going to bomb that Iowa until we are not able to make it back, and sure enough, there you go, bye bye. And immediately we notice that the preparation time goes up to 24 seconds. It's actually doubled. So that's meant as a penalty, so that you do not simply sacrifice your squadrons on top of the enemy AA, so that you can actually save the return flight and immediately start preparing the next squadron. So how does that affect the Chkalov? Well, the Chkalov does not get the full penalty, it only gets half of it, so concretely what is going to happen, we're going to be sending on one of the squadrons to bomb some fish and the other one to get deleted on the Iowa. And you're going to see that it goes quite fast, because those squadrons, those planes have very low HP pool, so they're probably not even going to make it over the Iowa. There you go, the first squadron returns nicely to the CV, and the other one gets deleted by the Iowa. Sure enough, you see how quickly that goes down. And there you go, that's one, and boom, there you go, they don't even make it back. And immediately you notice the difference between the two. The preparation time of 40 seconds, it's not double to 28, it's only increased to 21. So that's an incentive to behave like a kamikaze with your squadrons, to actually be spitting them faster. So back to the stats, and now we look at the torpedo bombers. 48 of them, 48, 2 squadrons, 6 bombers per squadrons. Wow, this is going to be really dangerous. Preparation time sucks, as you would expect with 6 planes, 25 seconds, but we have that special mechanic and we will be needing it, because they, just like the bombers, only 1400 HP. So they're going to get deleted quite often, quite a lot. You will be losing them, and the torpedoes only deal 1200 damage, so still pretty decent DPM, pretty decent floodings per minute, on par with the Sanzang, which is the best at Tier 8 with regards to that. So the Chkalov is actually a very good CV for fire and floods. And finally, let's take a look at the, so yeah, when we look at it, the offensive total, so the DPM is decent, 13,000, but we do have that mechanic to increase it. The guns DPM very good. The HP pool in total of the bombers is actually quite alright at 110,000, so yeah, even though they do not have a lot of HP, you do get a lot of them, and that's without transition. Let's talk about the fighters. That is where it starts to suck, because there the mechanic changes. You do not get get more fighters than the rest. It's actually have the lowest amount of fighters at tier 8, and they also have an absolutely abysmal amount of hit points, 1300. So your squadron only gets 6600 HP. You're going to, that's by far the lowest at tier 8, and you have to be super careful with those because you will be losing them very easily, and you're only having 10. So that's a bit annoying because they do deal quite a lot of damage. They're actually second to the Sanzang, which is the best at tier 8, so quite a lot of damage potential, but you have to be watching them constantly all the time. And finally the AA, it's average, nothing to see here. You can defend yourself, and that's about it. And so here we are back to the gameplay. So what we have, essentially what we are looking at, it's a tier 8 CV with tier 4, tier 5 planes, but quite a lot of them, except for the fighters, unfortunately. So that means that you really have to be super careful with them. You absolutely do not use them to scout, or you get ready to return back to your base as quickly as possible. And you see that I'm going to be parking them on top of my ships. Actually, I'm going to be parking them behind because I want them to survive as much as possible. You cannot go into an engagement with them. Oh, there you go, that's a DD that thinks it's safe. It doesn't know that I do have 2 squadrons of 6 torpedo boats, and immediately... So yeah, you're not going to trash the DD completely because they do deal a low amount of damage, but still you can leave him severely crippled, as you have seen. And while we were doing that, we managed to pull our fighters back from the back of the field to deal a little bit of damage to the enemy bombers, but again, I was not able to leave them exposed on the front line. You really have to watch over them like you would be watching over your first child, because they are absolutely ridiculously easy to be lost. And so we're going to be able to target the Tashkent to finish it with the dive bombers, because there is an opening on the enemy line. If there had been a single plane, there you go, you see, I brought the fighters back on the front, they came a little bit too close to that Benson, and immediately I lost one. But it's not going to happen with the dive bombers, because although they do have an insanely low amount of HP, there are no enemy ships between me and the enemy Tashkent, so we're going to be able to finish it quite easily. There you go. So yeah, it's actually one of the downsides of the Chkalov, because yeah, you are not able to send your planes on top of enemy AA. They will get deleted, but it does have a number of advantages, and I'm going to show you where it absolutely shines with that gameplay. By the way, this is the gameplay where everything goes well. There will be a second gameplay a bit later on, and everything will not be going well for us, and that's because, yeah, I really want to let you know what you're getting yourselves into with that ship. So where the Chkalov absolutely shines, it's you see that Nelson, who's completely isolated, trying to push as if I was not there, and it's going to get a really nasty surprise because I'm able to be spitting out my squadron. This is actually the use case, the scenario for which the Chkalov was actually made for. When you find an isolated ship on the enemy team with not a lot of AA, you can actually punish them very easily. And there you go, we're going to be setting that Nelson on fire. We just flooded him a little bit recently, so he does not have its damage come, and now we're going to be flooding him again with our excellent torpedo bombers. So yep, if you're looking for a ship that lets you spit planes at, at enemy isolated ships like there is no tomorrow, this is the one for you. Immediately the torpedo bombers are back at it, and they're going to be flooding that poor Nelson, who does not have a chance of escaping. And you see that I absolutely could not care less about the enemy fighters in that scenario. I mean, it would actually be better for me if he could take out my squadrons, because that would allow me to be spitting them back into the action faster. But where I have to be careful is actually when, you see, I'm not attacking them with the dive bombers, because I know that they will get absolutely deleted by the enemy fighters before they even make it to the Nelson. So I'm going to be leaving that poor Nelson alone. There's an Amagi right in front of it, so it's going to go down very quickly. But you really have to watch out for your planes with that thing, even though you do have a lot of them. They're not going to survive a confrontation with enemy fighters and make it to the target. It's not an indomitable squadron or the B-25 squadrons from the Hornet were almost impossible to take down. These things are really not meant to be facing AA. So there you go, against a Benson it's perfectly fine, for example, but against anything a little bit stronger than a DD, forget it. And so, speaking of the DD, I noticed that the two teams are still evenly matched at this stage of the game. Yes, we're going to be losing one battleship, there you go, and now it's 681 with 2 minutes left into the game, but the enemy team is making me a nice present because they are all spread everywhere across the map. And they're not presenting a big danger in terms of concentration of AA. So let's see if I can actually push that Benson out of its smoke screen right in front of my Italian battleship, and sure enough he's showing a really nice broadside there. Let's see what happens to him. There you go, my fleet mate takes him out, well done. And now we only have to deal with the two isolated German battleships. So we've done a good job with the fighters of the enemy CV earlier in the game. We've only managed to have dogfights on top of our ships, which made it easier for us to deal with. But you see that even if I'm doing that, I'm only left with 2 fighters to finish the game. So I haven't made any mistake with my fighters, but still only 2 of them left. So it's really, you really have to be looking at them all the time, every single time. So let's finish that Zetan. Oh, I'm not sure we're going to be able to do it because our DD is doing a very good job there. So this one is going down. And we can actually focus on the enemy Enterprise, and I think there was a Bismarck somewhere behind the Zetan. Let's see if we can actually, there you go, let's see if we can actually spot him. And there he is, completely isolated, ideal target for the Chkalov. I think you're trying to see in which scenarios this thing is actually doing very well. But unfortunately you will not be getting that too often at tier 8, and that's where the ship is actually struggling. And so we're going to see that in the next gameplay. Let's maybe fast forward to the end of the game, only 25 seconds left anyway. And so here we are, we put 12 torpedoes into the Bismarck, we flood him, the dive bombers will not have enough time to go back to set him on fire, but that's okay, we finish with the big caliber MVP, etc, and I think around 20,000 elemental damage on top of the, I think we've dealt something like 45,000 damage or 50,000 with the torpedoes. So let's take a look at another gameplay. And this time it's a little bit different. North Carolina, Kansas, Atlantico, Colorado on the enemy team, and even the Benson does have enough AA to be hurting our plane. So yeah, we're going to have to be a little bit more careful here, and that is where the Chkalov will start hitting its limitations. And keep in mind that that's something very important. We do not have a division on the enemy team, one of those very annoying, for example, Roma Ricci or Atlantico Ricci divisions supported by a good CV player. So we're still, how can you say it? It's not even the worst case scenario for the Chkalov, to be honest. So immediately the first thing we do is we absolutely avoid the confrontation with the enemy fighters. We really want to get as far as possible as we can. And there you go, you see the enemy fighters are actually hitting my bomber, so I'm going to sacrifice them on the Kansas as quickly as possible. The enemy DD is not looking for us, he's actually trying to focus on A, and I'm going to give him a really nice surprise once he comes out of its smoke screen. That ship is very good for that. There you go, that's going to be a perfect strike. When you have a DD that's absolutely not looking for you, there you go, that's excellent ship for that. Sure enough, there you go, nice wall of torpedoes, and yup, that's one in. But now I'm faced with a problem, because there is a concentration of AA, there you go, Colorado, North Carolina, Atlantico, Kansas, there's not a lot I can do. I have to wait for one enemy ship to make a mistake, and it looks like it's going to be the Kansas, who is fairly isolated. Let's see if we can set him on fire and flood him using the same method as what we did in the previous engagement. There I do make a mistake, I was not paying attention to my fighter, so they get engaged in a dogfight, something that you absolutely have to avoid, but luckily I still was close enough to my ships, and it were only Shokaku fighters on the enemy team, so we're able to retain the fighter squadrons. But unfortunately, and this is where I make a mistake, I should have brought them back immediately to my plane. Even though I didn't lose a single one, they are very low on health and they are incredibly vulnerable right now. So again, do not forget to treat those fighters as if they were your first child. You absolutely have to be watching over them all the time, never ever leave them alone, or you will get a nasty surprise. I've actually already lost 2 of them, and let's see what happens with the rest. You see that I'm always leaving them behind. I'm not letting them come anywhere near the enemy front line or enemy ships. I am extremely cautious with them. But okay, let's stop talking about the fighters for a while. Let's try to flood that Kansas, set him on fire again with the next wave of dive bombers. And yeah, that's again an ideal scenario for the Chkalov, but there's one difference with the previous game where it was a Nelson. This time it's a Kansas, and that thing actually has some AA. So unfortunately we do not set him on fire. This time we're going to try to flood him again. And watch what happens with my fighters. Sure enough, they get deleted, completely removed from the sky, and I still have 4 minutes left into that game with only 5 fighters left. So yeah, you can already guess how this is going to end up. While that Kansas is rushing us, we're going to have the opportunity to be trying out our guns, because the guns on that things are actually really good. Let's see if we can actually flood that Kansas for good measure. I just wanted to hit that DD while I could, but now it's time to focus on that Kansas again. So you can engage ships with your guns. This one is focusing on my battleships, so we're going to go to the other side, and I will be using my very powerful guns to set him on fire and deal as much damage as I can. So there you go, fire and flooding mechanics. The Chkalov is absolutely excellent for that, but I am losing my planes way too fast in that game. Every single ship is able to take out my squadrons entirely, and that's just very annoying, because that will happen a lot at tier 8. You will meet a lot of these ships on the enemy teams. And so sure enough, now it's flooded for good. We're going to be setting him on fire with our 8 guns with a very good fire chance, and this one is going to go down. Bombers are going to be adding a couple of fires to the to that poor Kansas. So yeah, never try to rush that ship, because you will be having a really tough time. And sure enough, there you go, fire number 2 and fire number 3 on top of it, and that's the end of that Kansas. The survivability is actually not very good. I just lost half of my health in one salvo there. But we finish him off. And you see that while I was paying attention to that Kansas and focusing him, I not paying attention to my fighters, I've lost them. There you go, that's it. 2 minutes left, and where I absolutely need to be protecting my team, I don't have a single fighter left. And that happened to me quite a lot while playing the Chkalov. You make one mistake with that thing, and really it's game over with your fighters. And so yeah, I'm afraid that's the conclusion of that review. It's a ship that shines against potato teams that make mistakes. But if you happen to have a good CV on the enemy team, and he knows how to counter you, which I think I've explained quite enough during that game, then you are in it for a tough ride. You will very likely lose your fighters. And by the way, there's a bug in the game, because I had 0 fighters left, and now all of a sudden I have 3 back. So that's very strange. I have no idea what happened there. I'm going to send that to Wargaming for review. That's very weird. But I digress. So yeah, it's really a tale of 2 stories with that thing. I saw in gameplay number 1, pretty friendly enemy team, all isolated ships with no AA, and that's where the Chkalov is able to shine. Gameplay number 2, different story, and we get depleted very easily, almost no dive bombers. Torpedo bombers, there's quite a lot of them, so that's going to take a bit of time, but it did happen to me to lose them all in a fight. And the fighters, obviously, well, that's where really that thing gets hurt. So yes, when you pull out a new CV at tier 8, which is the golden tier for CV, you really have to make sure that it does have something unique or unique capabilities that differentiate it. And done a good job with the Sanzang, for example, which was a very good defensive ship. But unfortunately for this one, it falls short in many dimensions, and I'm not sure it's entirely suited to the meta at tier 8. So it's very matchmaking dependent, which usually it's not the case for CVs. CVs are quite matchmaking independent, and they're quite flexible. This one really needs an increase in its number of fighters or in their HP pool to be quite competitive. And it's actually quite weird that they've given it so many bombers and torpedo bombers, but yeah, for the fighters unfortunately not that much, and that makes it, I'm afraid, the perfect CV to play against potatoes, but not necessarily the best one when you are faced with anything else. And Chkalov Sanzang confrontation, it would not go very well for you, I'm afraid. So that's the end of the review. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe, take care. That was DFA signing out. Bye bye.